All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Jennifer, and today I'm here with Brittany, and we're going to be talking about websites and all about her research. So, hi, Brittany. How are you today? Would you mind just introducing yourself to get us started?
Yeah. Hi. I'm Brittany. I'm a chemist and also a web designer for scientists. I graduated in 2018 with a bachelor's in chemistry from the University of Houston, and I started working in research and development for a polymer manufacturing company in Houston, Texas, for the past year and a half. And yeah, and then on my evenings and weekends, I do web design and I help scientists with their STEM website.
That's awesome. What inspired you to start designing websites? Like, what got you into that?
Yeah, so I actually started off in high school on Tumblr. So
Um,
yeah, and so on Tumblr, they had this interface where you could download a theme, but then you could actually also go into the code and see how the themes were coded. And I did have some uh, practice with like HTML through like summer camp and things like that. But Tumblr taught me the next level, which was CSS, which was like cascading style sheets. And,
yeah.
and I was like, this is like so much cooler because I can change a lot of things at once. And so that was really like where it all started.
So being able to see the back end of Tumblr and like understand more of the source code helped you kind of really get inspired and understanding it more inspired you to get more involved and make it part of your work.
Yeah, that's totally it. And it was also because like I didn't always like love the theme that I would get. I
Mhm.
was like, I want like this to be more, like this way or whatever. So that's how I got into the coding part so that I could really control it.
Oh, I really like that. You wanted more control over it. And so you
Mhm.
learned how to do it so you could have more control. I feel like maybe the same was for me, but like with MySpace, like all the way back.
Mhm.
And I wanted to have more specific themes or like add music or images. And
Yeah.
so I started to learn like HTML back then for that reason. So that's really cool.
Yeah. And so the thing is like a lot of people think that you need to code to do that now, but actually you don't need to code,
Yeah.
uh, which is really great. I think it makes it a lot easier. I mean, if you have coding knowledge, it kind of helps a little bit, but it's not like you have to know how to do this one thing before you can, design your website.
That's great. Tell me a little bit more about that. So, like for people who are listening, who are like, I know nothing about coding, I know zero coding, but I want an academic website. Like, what are their options?
Yeah, so there's a lot of great options out there for academics. For me, I always recommend people start off with their goal. Like, what is your goal for the website? So it's like a lot of scientists or science communicators are into blogging. So like,
Hmm.
if that's an important thing, like you'll need like a content management system, which would be like WordPress, for example, or maybe Squarespace. If you like I've seen a lot of scientists sell like science related art products. So it's like you want to have a shop. So then
Right.
you have to find the right platform that fits your needs. Um,
Right. There's not a right platform for everyone.
yeah, definitely. And I always see this on Twitter. Everyone's like, "What's the best platform?" It's like, no, you really have to ask yourself, like, what is your main purpose for this website? Because sometimes you just want like a really basic website. If that's the case, I'd be like, you could make a really simple Google site for like really low cost.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. That's great. Thanks so much for sharing that. I'd love to hear about a recent project that you worked on.
yeah. So when I first started my side hustle, I was really into like branding and web design, but I've recently pivoted away from the branding because I've seen that like all the things I talk about and all the things I'm more interested in were the web design component. And as part of this, like I decided to do some market research into my audience, and so I reached out to my Twitter and Instagram, and I was like, if you're interested, like to if you're interested in like starting your website but don't know where to start, like I am offering free consultations in exchange for some market research. I'll just ask
That's
like,
great.
yeah, just ask like a couple questions about like, what you think about websites and what you know about them, like, and all those things. And so that like I could create a better service. And so from all of that, like talking to so many academics from like different stages, like from early undergrad, early undergrad to like postdoc, I've really seen like everybody has like, they all start somewhere different with the website, and they all have like different goals because of like where they are in their career. And so
Yeah.
yeah, so it's like, and just talking to them has given me like so many ideas on like what I can offer next. And so I'm currently in the process of developing a new offer for academics who are interested in creating their own STEM website.
That's great because I feel like there's such a huge range of what people need for websites. They really
Mhm.
need more guidance, especially scientists who oftentimes have more public audiences
Mhm.
coming and looking for them early on, especially for
Mhm.
grants and conferences and publications. So I think that's super important. I really like what you said about reaching out to your Facebook audience and your social media audiences when you were looking for people to connect with.
Yeah. Yeah. So Twitter was actually where I started
Mhm.
with my online presence. It was like a whole, I'd say, personal rebrand for me. Um, it was because I had just switched from chemical engineering to chemistry, and this was already like 3 years into my undergrad, so it's like the end. And so I was like, I need to do something, and I was like, okay, maybe I should like network online. It was like Twitter's the place to go.
That's
Um,
great.
yeah. And so then actually I was surprised to find like such a vibrant academic scientific community, and it's actually just growing even faster. And I think that's awesome.
So you turned to Twitter and you found that it was super responsive and you actually
Yeah.
connected with people.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah. And then
great.
like found like grad blogger Dr. Chris Cloney, found like so many people now that I'm like talking to. It was all because of Twitter.
It's great that a platform like Twitter or really any social media platform could just bring us together and
Mhm.
really create conversations that help us all kind of understand what is really needed for academics and scientists and where everyone's kind of coming from. For
Yeah.
scientists who are thinking about starting a website, where do you suggest they start? I know you said start with a goal, but
Mhm.
let's say that they have their goal and they're ready to start on their website project. What do you recommend is the next step?
Yeah, so the next step I would say is that um, you should plan your content that you want on your website. Like you should know, and you have blog posts about this, like different sections on your website. So like you should know like what type of web text you want on that page, what pictures you want on that page, and kind of just like maybe sketch it out or something, because you don't.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, like sketch it out or draft it on like Google Docs or something, and you want to see like what it visually looks like before you open up the platform, the builder. um
I think that's great. I really like what you said about sketching it out and actually planning and thinking about like writing down some notes about it before you start, before opening up like your website host and actually creating your site. Why do you think it's so important to start with that planning stage? Like why do people often miss that step and like why should they start there?
yeah, I think it's just like when you come to, it's like a blank canvas, you don't know like how you want to put things until like you know like what's supposed to go there, right? And so then
Mm.
like once you kind of have an idea of like, okay, this is going to be like about this big, this is going to be about this big, then you can put it up there. Otherwise, if you just start designing things and then you actually put it together, you're like, well, this doesn't really look right, and then you actually spend more time. And so it's like, as academics, I think most academics want to make the process as efficient as possible,
Yes, they're
so
so
that
busy, right?
yeah, exactly, so that they can go back to like writing their grants or going to the lab or whatever. And so like to make that process more efficient, like the planning, it's the same way like experimenting. Like you don't just go in the lab and do an experiment. You plan it, so
That's great. What a good analogy too. That you need to plan things before you start them because that's how you know what to do and when to do it. And of
Mhm.
course, why it's important, like why it's important to you that you're spending all this time on this website project.
Yeah.
So tell me a bit about how you manage your online presence. I know you said that you're on Twitter,
Mhm.
but how else do you manage your online presence? What does that look like?
Yeah, so I mean, right now I have like my personal website, which has resources and information about STEM or websites and STEM websites. Eventually, I plan to incorporate, like my academic research on it as well. And also, like it will be kind of like a portfolio of sorts.
It can grow and expand as your interests and your focus increases
Yeah,
essentially. That's great.
yeah, yeah, which is why I think it's like so important for people to have that like their own personal website because you can do whatever you want with it, you know?
Yeah.
Um, and yes, like I mentioned, I have Twitter, which at first it was like started off as kind of more like as a observer. Like I was just connecting with people, like trying to be as professional as possible.
Right.
Um, but over time, I think as I've connected with more people, I've actually like, interacted with more people and I've like become more personable as well. Because on Twitter, like you want to be like yourself, um,
Hmm.
and I've
But
like,
it's hard, right?
yeah,
Yeah. I know when I started out on Twitter, I feel like I didn't know what to say. And so I shared a lot of articles that were I was reading and that I was interested in. And people enjoyed that. There was no reason that like people weren't engaging with that type of content. But when I started sharing like my thoughts and my opinions and then eventually tips and tricks about online presence, it made a huge difference with how people were engaging with me and like having conversations with me. And I just saw like a change based on me starting to be myself and starting to
yeah,
share more of what I actually thought and what I was saying.
yeah, and that's so important. I think like some people like they fear really putting themselves out there because
Yeah.
like the internet anybody can see it.
It's
Um,
scary.
yeah, so I think it does like require some I like you do have to be like a little bit strategic if you want to
Mhm.
manage like a like your personal brand as well. But it also comes to like like you said, you were talking about online presence. Like everybody has that like one or two things that they love to talk about or like they have
Yeah.
so much knowledge about, and like that's what the internet is for sharing that. And so like someone out there is like they want to hear it from you.
Yeah.
That's how I think about it. So yeah, Twitter's so much fun.
Are you on
Yeah.
other social platforms?
Yes, so I'm actually also on Instagram. When I started out on Instagram, it was like I think I was like in high school or whatever. So it was more personal. Um,
Right.
but but again, over time, it's like evolved, and now I show up more as my personal brand slash business, and now I share a lot more information regarding to like setting up your website and like your online presence and things like that. So
That's great. A question that I get a lot from people is I have this personal Instagram and I've been, connecting with my friends and my family. Can I start to share things about science? Can I start to share things about my teaching or my work? And it sounds like for you, that was totally possible. What was that experience like?
yeah, so I think I did have some resistance to
Hmm.
doing that at first because I was like, well, this is like mostly, my friends from college or
Yeah.
whatever. Like, what are they going to think or whatever? But then I really just had to kind of step away from like that place of judgment. And I had to like see it like, okay, well, I have this platform and I have these things I want to say. So it's like, I can, I can use this platform to say those things. And so, and I think it's like perfectly okay. And if someone doesn't like it, they can always unfollow you, to be
That's
honest.
very true. And I would say like that person might unfollow you on Instagram, but maybe they're still connected with you on Facebook, or maybe you're still texting with them. So like
Yeah.
people will connect with you where they're most comfortable connecting with you. And sometimes you have to step away from yourself a little bit to get there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, thanks for sharing that. That's really great that you kind of were uncomfortable in the beginning and then did it
Mhm.
anyways and found that it
Yeah.
was okay. Thanks for sharing that. So do you have Facebook?
No, I don't
No.
actually.
Do you have
Yeah.
LinkedIn?
Yes, I do have a LinkedIn. I totally
LinkedIn.
forgot about that.
No,
It,
that's fine.
yeah, actually, it's like it's I think I forget about my LinkedIn. I think
I
ever
think a
since
lot
I
of people do.
yeah, ever since I got my job, I haven't been as diligent to update it. But LinkedIn is very important because a lot of people, you know, they connect on there professionally. It's like the Facebook, but for professionals. So
Yeah, that's totally true. I definitely I feel like I connect mostly with friends and family on Facebook and
right.
then with a lot of people on LinkedIn. Not as
Hmm.
many friends or family though, as Facebook.
Yeah.
So, is there any guide or resource that you'd like to share? I know that you create. I love your recent Instagram post about all of the different possibilities for website hosts. Like, is there
Yeah.
anything you'd like to share? I want to make sure that we get that in there.
Yeah. So the very first thing I created, like in May or end of May, it was called the Google Sites Guide, and I created this guide because I thought, yeah, it's for people who have like no idea where to start on their websites. Like,
Yeah, which is a
um,
lot of people. A lot of people don't know where to
yeah,
start.
yeah. And the reason why I chose Google Sites is because Google Sites is accessible through Google Drive and it's free and it's a really great platform to just start off to see like what you want for your next website. You know, like you can just, you know, start here, and especially some people feel like they don't have a lot yet, you know, and they're like, oh, I don't want to like make like a real website. And I'd say like this is a good starting point. um, and the great thing is that if you wanted to, you know, get your personalized URL and your domain name, it's only $12 a year.
Yeah,
And then
that's
like,
a super great price. And it's
yeah,
totally worth, like, if you're going to go through the trouble of making a Google Sites, if you're
yeah,
listening to this, you should definitely spend that $12. It's worth it. But the nice thing about Google Sites is also that, like, they're definitely going to crawl their own websites, right? Like, you know, you're going to show up in the Google search when someone searches your name because it's Google Sites. Like, you're definitely going to show up.
yeah, it's not only that, but also the other great thing is that like there's limited options in fonts and colors and themes, so you're not stuck in that design overwhelm. You just like,
Yeah.
you know, you can just click on it. If you don't like it, you can change it, and they have like preset layouts. It's like it's very user friendly, and so that's like
Mhm.
your first step into the website design. And then once you realize like, oh, I want something that's more like X, Y, and Z, it's like, well, then, you know, you
You
can
can make
go.
that decision, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But an informed decision.
Yeah, yeah. I typically suggest people to not like invest in their website right away. I suggest that they try the free plan for a while, like try every single functionality as much as possible, um, so that they can get a feel for like what they don't like, what they actually need in their website.
Mhm.
Because even though it's like maybe 50, 150, whatever dollars, it's still a considerable investment. So it's like you want to be happy with your website, and like in order to be happy, you do need to spend some time like thinking about, you know, what you actually want on there, how do you want to do it, and things like that.
Yeah, I agree. A website is like a long-term investment, and not everyone realizes that. Like, of course, once you create your site in Google Sites, if you want something more robust, like with a huge blog, you could switch to WordPress. But in
Mhm.
general, like you don't want to have to move your site too many times. If you build
Yeah,
on like Wix.com because you think it's going to be super easy, and then you realize that you need something that's totally different from that, that's going to be much harder to move than it is from another platform. I think that having a guide like that is so important. So I'm definitely going to share the link below this video. Be sure to check it out.
yeah. And I'm so glad you mentioned Wix because I feel like so many people still recommend Wix, but I
Mm.
personally do not like Wix. And the main reason is because if you have a lot of content on Wix, it's very hard to export that content onto another platform. And
Yes.
so it's like once you build your website on Wix, it's like you're kind of stuck there. or you just have to start over.
You'd have to
And
like copy and paste all of your content by hand, maybe like into a
yeah,
doc and then like migrate it by hand. Yeah.
yeah.
Their terms of service make it pretty unclear that that's the case, but
Hmm.
it's too difficult. Like I never recommend Wix. And I haven't, so I created like my very first website on Wix. I created a literary journal website for like my undergrad literary journal, which I was editor in chief of at the time. And it was like a huge project and I was so excited about it, right? But it was on Wix. And after me, like no one else learned website design. So it just like disappeared into the ether. I hadn't seen Wix in years since then. And then last year I was consulting with a research center and they had Wix for their website. And when they
Oh my
showed
God.
me the back end, it was
Oh
a
no.
nightmare. Let me tell
Yes.
you, it was so bad. I couldn't believe that like this kind of situation had happened because all of the content was messed up. It wasn't loading on mobile and desktop at the same time. If you clicked
Hmm.
on something, it would go way back to like the very first homepage. And
Oh my
that's not
God.
what you want in a website. That's not user
No.
friendly. But the back end loaded super slow. It seems like there were a billion choices and no one really had time to research those choices. So they were often never made. And I think that that happens with a lot of people on Wix. Like it updates and you have to keep going with it. And if you're not really invested in making sure that all of those updates are applied, you're going to miss out.
Yeah, I totally agree about the back end part. Like when I was starting out with, exploring the different platforms, I had looked at Wix a couple years ago, and
Yeah.
even then I wasn't like too into websites. I was like, this back end is very clunky, you
Mhm.
know?
And you
And
knew that because you'd looked at the Tumblr backend and
yeah,
you knew that it could be very clean.
yeah. And so I was just like, how is anyone still building their website? So it's actually a little pet peeve of mine when people still recommend Wix to, especially academics, because I think it just goes against everything that academics want. It's like you want to save time, you want to make fewer decisions. Like then don't use Wix. Use something like WordPress or Squarespace.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely. And
like
those aren't that difficult to learn. Like overall, the learning curve isn't significantly different than Wix. And keeping
mhm.
those updated is a lot less work in the long run.
Yes, especially if you love blogging or you have a portfolio because of that content management system, like it's so easy. And then the other thing is that like with WordPress, you can export all that content if you needed to. It's like literally like 2 clicks or something like that.
Yeah.
So,
It makes it super easy to make sure that you have control over that and you save it. That's one pet peeve of mine is like you should have control over your website. It shouldn't be
yes.
on like your university's homepage or
Mm.
with like an association that you belong to. Like those are awesome and you should contribute in some way, maybe to their blog or something. But like your website, that should be yours.
Yes, definitely. And yeah, the having an academic website like with your university because they already provide it is great. But the other thing is like with SEO, the search engine,
Mhm.
sometimes they don't crawl those websites because it's just like so far down. But like if
Yeah.
you had your own website with your name, and then you would be like the top result, you know?
Right. Because the results are based on like what users are searching for and helping them actually find that information. So if someone's searching for your name, they're going to find your website if it's like something that's searchable. On Wix, it's
Yeah.
not always that searchable. So
Yeah.
maybe don't use Wix.
Yeah. I could roast it all day long.
Yeah, I probably could too. That's why this is a fun conversation.
Yeah. And then the other thing but of course there's also that like the thing is like if you're already happy with your website where it is, just stick with it, you know? Cuz like
Yeah.
there's no point in adding more work to yourself if you're already content. So that's the
Yeah.
other side of it.
I agree. That's completely true. As long as your website is workable and people are like visiting it because you're sharing it, then that's totally fine. You should keep your website where it is. I agree.
Yeah.
What was it? There was one other thing that I wanted to ask you that you just mentioned. Ooh, we were talking about website platforms, and you said that you were looking at a bunch of different backends. When you were starting to get into website design. I'm
Mhm.
curious, what other backends did you look into, and like was there anything else that you didn't like?
Yeah, so Weebly is another popular one amongst academics, and I'd say Weebly is kind of like mediocre to me.
Hmm.
It has the functionalities you need, and you make a decent website, but it's also slow a bit, and
It's kind of
uh,
slow to load, like on the
yeah.
user end. Like if I'm visiting a Weebly site, it usually takes like 10 seconds or maybe even longer to load sometimes.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Don't get me started with like load times. I just had to fix that on my own website.
Well, load times are important. Like it's great that you fixed it because, I mean, just for anyone who's listening, you may not know about websites, but I don't know, when I'm visiting a website, if it takes a really long time to load, I'm a little bit worried that there might be a security issue on the other end.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit worried that there might not actually be a website on the other end, like it might be down or that I got the wrong link. So
Hmm.
sometimes I'll click off. And I think that that's common for a lot of people. So having a load time for your website that would be really long might deter people from actually visiting your website.
Yes, that is so true. And I think it's also just an attention span thing. Like we're so used to getting things like instantly. And so like if it takes longer than 3 seconds, we're like, I'm out.
Yeah.
Yeah. But back to Weebly, the
Mm.
plugins, like the functionalities are also like not that customizable. Like
Ooh, okay.
yeah, like on at least for like WordPress, they have a lot of built-in functions, and pretty much anything you need is already there. And then if you
Yeah.
have like a self-hosted WordPress, then you can install like any plugin that's available to
You
you.
can do anything. Yeah.
Yeah. And then Squarespace has their like own curated set of tools. But in Weebly, like to make a table, I had to, get a plugin for a table, and like it was just confusing, I think, and it's just not very intuitive. So, but
Right.
again, if you're already on there and you're happy, well, just stick with it.
Yeah, you could stick with it or you could switch to WordPress. I like
Yes.
I like WordPress.
Yeah, I do too. I do too. Yeah. Oh, and then the last one would be Squarespace, which is one I explored more recently. And Squarespace is great. I just think a lot of academics that I've talked to, they've never heard of Squarespace, or like they've heard of it, but they mistake it for Square with like the payment.
Oh, with where you swipe. Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely.
Yeah. So I thought the same thing too, but that's a different story. But they also like they mostly hear it from like podcast ads or whatever. So
That makes
um
sense because I mean it really is for businesses. It makes clean websites though. Like
yeah.
very minimalist. Like if you're into like one page and that's what you want, then Squarespace might be a really good option for you. If you're selling things, then it's definitely something to consider. I tend to find it a little clunkier for blogging. That's just my
Yes.
personal opinion, but
Yeah.
for academics, it could be a totally clean option that's better than Weebly and definitely
Yes.
better than Wix. I mean, anything is better than Wix, but
I
definitely
totally
better than
agree.
those drag and drop editors.
Yeah, and like with Squarespace, I agree. The blogging part is a little bit more complicated than in WordPress. But I think the great thing about Squarespace is that they already have the pre-designed layouts, and you visually see it and you click it and it goes on your page. Like you don't have
Yeah.
to put anything anywhere, and so you can easily get a modern and professional website on Squarespace with like very little training.
That's
um,
excellent advice.
yeah, so that's kind of like my go-to to somebody. I was talking to somebody recently. She said she wanted a website. She's currently a postdoc. She wanted a website that could transition her from her postdoc to potentially her group in the future. And I was like, I think Squarespace would be a good option because you can, have it just focus on you for now. And then like as it grows, you can grow with it, and it's much more manageable for you to learn and do on your own, as opposed to like a self-hosted WordPress, which is what I have, and
Mhm.
what most people find to be like technically confusing at times, which I agree it can be.
It
So
is, it's more technically complex, but I think for academics, what's more important is that it can take more time to manage and to keep
yes.
it updated. And
Hmm.
so for busy people who don't necessarily pencil in updates to their CV, it's
Hmm.
not necessarily the best choice.
Yeah.
If you can't drop everything to fix an issue, then maybe a managed WordPress is a better option where they take
Yes.
care of things like the security and they take care
Hmm.
of updates for you. Squarespace is another really good option for that because it takes care of those things so you don't have to worry too much about it.
Yeah, and actually, the managed WordPress, what you are currently on, correct?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so when I started off with websites, I wrote a science blog and it's on WordPress.com.
Mhm.
And so if anyone's interested, they can easily find it. But
Also, I would say like WordPress.com is pretty similar to Squarespace in that like there are options where you can just choose a theme and like just
yes,
input your things into it. And it makes it a lot easier than selecting one of millions of themes on WordPress self-hosted.
yes, and so this is what I found out recently when I visited WordPress, and then I saw their new block editor and like all those different page layouts. I was like, wow, this is like a huge improvement from a couple years ago. So originally, it was not something I recommended to many people, but
Mhm.
now I've seen the updates, and I'm like, this is actually such a great option for science bloggers who are starting out because they have that affordable personal plan,
Right.
and everything, like you said, is managed, and you don't have to worry about that stuff. So I have a change of heart on Manage WordPress.
We ended up having like a really long conversation about like different website hosts, but it was so good. I feel like we talked about a lot of things that are going to help people. Like
Yeah.
that's going to help people make some decisions because that is the most often question I get. Like, what website host do I use? I
Hmm.
was told GitHub. I was told coding. I was told
Yeah.
Squarespace. I don't have any idea. Can you just tell me? And I'm like, well, it again, like you said, it starts with your goal.
Yeah. But I just love talking about this. So I'm so glad that we, connected over this and everything.
Yeah, this was really fun. Just wrapping up the interview, I do want to let you know I'm definitely going to have you back because when your website course comes out, you have to come on my YouTube channel and talk about it.
Okay.
This was so much fun. So, is there anything else you want to add before we wrap up?
Yeah, I mean, if you're can always follow me on Instagram and Twitter. Connect with me on Instagram. I do a lot of. I'm starting like an Instagram TV series called Website Workshops, and
Oh, I love it.
yeah, so it's just like little tidbits about like things you can do for your website. And then on Twitter, I just talk about science and grad school, going to grad school, and all this fun stuff. So yeah, just connect.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on The Social Academic.
Thanks for having me.